Welcome back to the Insurgent Mindset. I'm Matt Tice.
And I'm Rondo Moses. This is a podcast about challenger thinking in a world shaped by disruption.
And in every episode, we explore strategies and leadership mindsets that help businesses break from the pack and stay ahead in fast-changing markets.
You'll hear conversations, case studies, and insights from leaders who are applying these mindsets to thrive in uncertain environments.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Apple or Spotify, and check out our companion blogs at insurgentsgroup.com for a summary or takeaways from each episode. Now, let's get into today's conversation, Rondo, with Ben Rijnbeek from Beek Build. So I'm really excited about this one because I've gotten to know Ben a bit, and we just had our mini series on construction productivity and sort of just general productivity. So Ben's going to come today and talk a little bit about sort of bringing fresh thinking and agile methods to construction. Really interesting.
I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, let's bring Ben on and we'll get right into it. Great to see you, Ben. How are you?
Good, yourselves?
Good.
We're
Welcome,
terrific.
Ben.
Thanks.
Morning.
So, Ben, we always start the podcast off with the guests just trying to get a sense of your history and how did you end up from there to here. So, give us the Ben story. Take us through, what interested you about this topic, this area, and how did Beek Build come to life?
I guess a big thing for me has always been efficiency and how to do things better than what we're actually doing it today. So it's always been a bit of a drive of having that continuous improvement mindset. So it was always a key area within our business when starting Beek Build. It's actually when one of our values, evolve and adapt, is one of our key values here at Beek Build. So I guess that come from my early days in the career in construction, where project management is very systemized, following a flow, following a process, and trying to find efficiencies to gain cost savings as well as time. So kind of ingrained very early in my career from that. But Beek Build sort of story probably started in tumultuous times around COVID. So I previously was working on the east coast of Australia and moved back to my hometown where I grew up here in Adelaide, South Australia. When moving back, I sort of saw a large gap where it was somewhat a very traditional market here. There was a lot of businesses that were doing well in construction, but they're long-term family-owned companies that were doing very similar models across the board. So I moved back into South Australia and really sort of had that vision to bring a new age of sort of digital technology into construction, ways to find efficiency through high levels of communication visually as well as digitally. So that was the core of sort of really starting to investigate further into the market and understanding where that target audience is going to be best used. The fun that come out of it, though, that was with all the energy and enthusiasm that someone has when they're starting a business. And everyone understands what happened around February, March of 2020. So that was COVID. So in the mix of COVID, I was starting a company up and thinking, what the hell have I done? This is the worst idea in the world. But what it actually did, the positive out was it gave that downtime that people really don't have when they start a business. It's normally rush, get work, let's move and try and solve the problems on the run really quickly. But it gave a lot of opportunity to really analyze what's going on in the market and find that really niche point of difference. And everyone sort of was home or not allowed to go to work or working from home. So I was able to make a lot of connections through Teams rather than trying to balance people's calendars. So that gave me a lot of good inroads to new people and new clients. And then that looking at different avenues of how to make a business connection through sort of different starting points of the journey that people have. So there's a developer starting point, there's an architectural starting point, and then there's sort of a inquiry traditional sort of starting point as well. So from that, we focused in on our business of what's the areas with the most needs, and that was sort of the medical space. So we started off doing medical fit outs and really doing PC2 labs, and sort of really that point in time was the need around medical work. So from that, we then evolved into larger construction till today. We're a team of nearly 16 now. And we've got the platforms and the systems running really well. And we basically started to integrate from that early point is our digital management system, our platform. We have a bit of a joke in the office that we only really print 5 to 10 pieces of paper a week. And it's kind of funny what you think in construction with all the paper plans and the approvals and the inductions and everything else, that we don't have any of that paperwork around the office. So that's really the backbone of what we do and how we do things, which has been enabling us now to really have that interaction point with our client and our customers and growing the business really rapidly.
Okay, so then Ben, so stepping back just one step back from Beek Build, what were you doing specifically before that? Like
Yeah, so before that, pre-COVID, I'd worked previously in construction companies here in South Australia, then moved over to Victoria and was doing very similar. So just project management, construction management roles, where working in with teams around the country, doing sort of stadiums and multi-story buildings. We were doing sort of specialist walling installation. So that pathway for me. So funnily enough, it kind of started in an untraditional way in a bit, because I started working after my schooling. I went to Holden, so went into manufacturing and understanding a manufacturing system. So I was there while I was studying. So I sort of had a year off, did some travel like a lot of us do. From that, I went into Holden's because I realized very quickly that traveling and the bank balance really very quickly. So yeah, I decided to go work at Holden's to bring some money in, but then also started my study and my construction sort of pathway there, and then went in and worked with various South Australian builders before moving to Melbourne and doing similar over there, and then making the decision to come back to South Australia to start the business.
Okay, so the Holden experience, I really wanted to draw that out because
Yeah.
I guess one of the things Rondo and I have been talking about is, we're really fixated on productivity in this sort of economic environment. And, construction's always at the bottom of the league tables, Ben, as you well know, right?
Yeah.
So, depending on what you read, it may even be negative over quite a long period of time in terms of productivity gains. And I guess Holden is a manufacturer, right? So that's sort of, which has a much more mature and disciplined approach to efficiency and productivity and systems and things like that.
Right.
I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then Rondo, over to you to sort of pick it up. I'd love to hear your thoughts to kind of draw a contrast between what you saw in your early days between Holden and that sort of formative construction experience.
Yeah, I think the lessons learned were definitely about that lean management, trying to find that a manufacturing system. I think Holden's were based similar to the Toyota. They were using the blueprint of a Toyota manufacturing system. So using those Kanbans, those SOPs, standardized operating for tasks, and those control points along the way for quality control checks and balances. So that was sort of a framework that is sort of has been translated into the business somewhat. We use a lot of work instructions and WKIs, as we call them here. And that's systemizing. It's about finding those efficiencies and those improvements. So yeah, it definitely gave a great foundation, and being exposed to that really young and understanding that you have to do a certain thing a certain way over and over and over again to get the best result. And then coming to there and going, okay, well, what if I alter 5 steps differently here, or taking away this part, we're going to get the same result, but we save a massive amount of money or a certain amount of time. And that time value equates to a productivity and also cost saving for the business. So it was really, without probably knowing it, and I probably haven't sat here until being asked this question by you guys to think about that, probably fundamental of those little things probably has set a pathway along where that is part of the business and part of what we're trying to achieve here at Beek Build in construction.
So Ben, it sounds like your focus was really on tackling the inefficiencies in the industry, right? With your model. Are there other challenges that, you saw in the industry that were also top of mind for you? I mean, as Matt said, globally, I know that even though construction is like 13% of GDP, it has like 1%, the tables show 1% productivity, and on average 5% EBITDA, so profitability. Like, what were some of the other challenges that you thought, I think this model can also address in addition to inefficiencies, some of the other challenges in the industry?
Yeah, I think the big challenge and that we're addressing is the communication point between sort of an office team or a team that might be remote, and a team that are on site. So actually translating and having access to that translation point of, okay, well, let's visually look at an issue on site rather than sort of someone going out there with a photo, taking that, sending an email, going back and forth. We're solving that problem through our digital capture modeling tools. So we have our site teams every day walking around site, capturing the entirety of the project. What that does, it creates a Google Earth of the project. So we can bring that up in a Teams meeting or a live model meeting, and we can actually zoom in and out or walk around that issue and actually have a quick response. But we can engage that with our clients and an architect all at a single point, which allows us to solve the problem, provide that solution, and move forward like really quickly. So that was the other real key area of how do we increase. Well, it's kind of a funny thing. How do we decrease those amount of email chains? How do we decrease the amount of email back and forth chains by getting quicker responses by simply just having access to these tools and tools and getting into the nitty gritty of the on site while we're actually sitting in an office or away from the project.
And you describe it, at least on your website, more as an agile construction approach, right? Can you give our audience more insight into what does agile really mean from a construction perspective?
I think construction sort of really works on the waterfall model. You do one task to the next and so on and so forth. But we're in sort of the IT world, and where we're integrating it, it's basically milestoning sort of areas and working through grouping different sort of project sets into milestones, and then using that technology to sort of get in front of a lot of the quality and a lot of the regulatory stuff that come into construction. So being that sort of agile approach gives us the flexibility to sort of modularize through milestones, rather than, okay, one task finish, next tick and flick sort of style.
And then, okay, so Ben, I'm really curious then in the agile model, and I love the way you just described that sort of like central command and then work, sort of tentacles out to the projects and things like that to be able to get almost like real-time telemetry back from the projects to troubleshoot. Love that, right? So how do you organize, right, your labor, your team? Like, what's the operating model for Agile in construction, and how is it different than what you've seen in in your other experiences?
Yeah, I think for us, it's quite funny. We've kind of there's a funny piece that we've been challenged with as well, because a lot of the technology comes from a little bit of that experience. And it's funny when you look at a bell curve of people's career and where they're currently at, technology experience is actually at the lower end of people's career. They're more savvy, or they're more experienced of the use of technology at their early careers, because that's where they've all grown up with, where some of the older generation in the industry have got a lot of site-based experience or technical knowledge in the building, but they lack the sort of technology piece. So we've had a bit of a funny one trying to mix and how to resource it. So the good thing for us is we've got quite a young team. I think majority of us, I think we're about 80% below 30, which is, for a construction company, that's quite rare. But we've got that mix of sort of that technical leads that bring it back down. But resourcing it by that model, we actually haven't had a model where we've had a lot of project managers. We've had a lot of contract administrators and then site-based guys. So the project manager itself at that level hasn't really been required for us as much. So we've placed in a construction manager, which brings that high-level technical knowledge and pulling the technicals together. But we've got a lot of sort of doers and worker bees at that contract administration and contract level that use the technology to go in every day, see what's going on, and communicate with our site guys. So the resourcing's been a little bit different than the traditional model, where traditional model is you have you sort of construction manager, you have several project managers, then you have a CA level, then you have a sort of a coordinator level as well. So we've actually probably, with what we're doing at the moment, been able to run, and with our growth as well, quite significantly run with a bit more of a leaner model than most traditional companies are currently doing, particularly here in South Australia.
So if I understand you correctly, you've centralized project management and taken out that role. So
Pretty much, yeah.
a
So
whole line in the ladder. Okay, that's really interesting. And those other jobs, do those jobs change significantly in terms of what they're actually doing?
not so much. I think there's a bit more of an increase in our sort of daily checks. I guess there's a clinch pin to all that, where the site teams now are being they have to be a bit more active to do these walkthroughs. So basically, it's a 360-degree camera that they have to wear every day. So there's some real key tasks that they have to do, which they wouldn't traditionally normally do. But then that allows every other function of the business to work really seamlessly.
Mhm.
Okay, so you've almost inserted the technology at the bottleneck, which is,
Mm.
as you described before, that back and forth, which just creates kind of delay. What about, so when Rondo and I talked about, and Ben, we talked about this before, talk to us about orchestration then. So, because obviously construction is as much about building as it is about connecting suppliers and getting people on site at the right time and doing, sort of the client or the customer might come in with changes, and you're constantly trying to orchestrate all these resources. So without that project management, how do you orchestrate those resources and how do you do that efficiently to keep jobs on track, but most importantly, to keep the economics in the green zone?
Yeah, so
Mhm.
from that we have that construction manager role. So that's that overall seeing role that we've got that sort of steps into a little bit of that project management stuff from time to time. But ultimately, we run a program that's called Procore. So I guess the best way to describe it is we've got that personnel resource, but then we've got this digital resource package. So it's like where we call it internally Beek Connect. And what that is it's Procore that provides us with a digital system to manage the project that allows us to have an insight into various areas of the project around program and timing, cost controls, forecasting, actual versus allowed, our quality management through ITPs and all those regulatory requirements. Then we use another program that also integrates into that, which is Hammertech, and that manages a lot of our QHSE, so a lot of our site stuff, our site safety, our regulatory requirements, our environmental requirements. That helps us maintain our ISO management systems for our certification, and then the open space. So there's a network of these digital platforms that actually all integrate, and they seamlessly integrate. So that really is the system that allows all those elements to come together, and the resources jump into those particular key point areas, and they manage through the functionalities of those programs that help us really get to the deep diving of what's going on a day-to-day or week, month, and quarterly within the projects.
What do you see as sort of the biggest I would say opportunities or benefits that you get out of this agile approach versus the traditional construction method? Like, what's the problems that you're able to solve more effectively or faster with using the agile methodology than the more traditional construction method?
I think having some of our projects are design and construct, so we're actually having the ability to make quicker decisions to pivot very quickly and easily. We can sort of get on the front foot with some of those key problems. We get often designs that are limited due to the sort of expense that an architect might have allowed on a project. So their design level might only get to 70% or less sometimes. So
Mhm.
having the ability to get sort of those limited design documentation then allows us to get into a area where if we need to make decisions based on sort of our own design or getting more engagement from the architects, we can actually, rather than waiting 2 or 3 days, 4 days by sending a back or forth or a sketch or anything else, we can bring them in really quickly and make quick decisions to move the project forward. Rather than sort of that traditional model is, okay, do one step, follow your RFI, wait for the response and move forward. So having that agile sort of approach allows us to be there really flexible and quick decision makers.
So
Interesting.
Ben, this is a podcast about the insurgent mindset. So you're the insurgent, you're challenging, right? These approaches are relatively unheard of in much of construction. Now, I can imagine you mentioned the younger cohort and perhaps the older, more experienced cohort. And as you bring people on, how do you build a culture around this, right? So that, is there training, or is there, the Beek building way, or whatever it is that sort of, kind of embeds into your own corporate DNA this agile approach. So walk us through how you build that culture, how you lead, and perhaps also how you bring new people on and nurture them through their journey with
Yeah.
Beek.
I think like with anything you're bringing in, like an owner of a business has got a vision, and you've got to find people to come along with the journey. And initially bringing in this new technology and the discipline of people just simply wearing that 360-degree hat every day, people were a bit resistant to it initially. So there was some education that we really had to put into the business and really ingrain it into our onboarding. So when the benefits start to be seen, people start to engage even further. And then when you start to get some champions within the business that really drive it as well, it starts to flow on and build a culture. So what we did, we went to a couple of key people in the business, and we really coached and trained them of how to use technology and how to also be part of this agile approach. From that, we've now developed our induction system and a training. So we have a lot of training modules that we've put together internally. A lot of our discussions that we have in either just meetings or improvements around this technology, we record and we upload that. We've got a bit of a HR system as well. We love our systems here, which is Employment Hero. But what that allows us to do is actually create our own training modules. So we have a lot of training modules that we use just simply through conversations, because I think sometimes the raw conversations can solve the problem. So we record them and put them up so that teams can actually see what's historically been discussed about a product that we're bringing in, how we've engaged it. We back that up by a work instruction as well. So there's a digital area that we go in, and we know exactly what work instruction is for that task. But the really other big area is an OKR system, so objective key result. So we have that system, so that is all about continuous improvement and building that culture around thinking about continuous improvement and bringing those agile mindsets into our operations and our processes. So it's been nothing's ever perfect straight off the bat. There's always been a challenge. And when you agitate or trying to do something else, there's always a bit of a pushback. When you do get a new employee who goes, well, I've done like this before and I'm comfortable and this is what I know best. So there is a cultural shift when they come to Beek, and it's initially it was a bit of a surprise to people. This is how we do things. Now create a really great core team here that understands it. And now it's translating to people in the industry going, I actually want to come and work for Beek because they're doing something different.
And Ben, I noticed you have a 92% employee engagement score. How do you see Beek Build maintaining that high level of employee engagement as you scale the organization?
Yeah, it was a good sort of result to get when you see your employees undertake an independent survey as part of the Australians' best places to work, which we were successful enough last year to get top 10 in Australia for small businesses and we're only coming up to our 5th year in business this end of October. So it was good to see those kind of results come through. Maintaining it, I think our workplace and the way that we've designed our office and the way that we've branded our business, everything is very thoughtful. So our office, walking in, is everyone sort of tells us, and that was the vision. It's very home feeling. So we've got that feeling of people working from home when they come to our office. So they've got very nice coffee machines and drinks and things like that, or the niceties. But we also do a lot of cultural stuff around Friday fortnights at 4. So we put the laptops down at sort of 4 o'clock on a Friday every fortnight, and we do some group activities. That's rotated. Every staff member gets to pick and choose what that is. And we've got one this Friday, this afternoon. But last Friday fortnight, they did a lemonade making competition, and then there was a taste off afterwards. So it's like little fun things that just break up the week. We do a conference every year. We have a lot of training. We do a lot of external training to keep our team members upskilled, but also that they see that the business is investing back into them, so we can get back in return. So, and that OKR system is really a big part of it, is where they get a voice, they get an opportunity to actually help shape and be part of our growing business, and have that influence where and to maintain that as we continue to grow and add more people. I think that's what a lot of bigger businesses lose. They will say that people get an actual true say, but there's nothing really tangible through. So the OKR system for us is a 30, 60, 90-day improvement model. And they see a starting point, what that might be. They get peer feedback. So it's not a management sort of come to management and tell us. It's actually a peer feedback with everyone in the business. And then they can see, and they're responsible for implementing that change in the business and see the end result. So that's a great way for us to maintain a lot of that engagement and that expectation that we're looking for in the business moving forward.
So Ben, Rondo mentioned the term scale, right? So you are a smallish business, and you've sort of made these big investments in this capability. So we're really interested in what comes next, and how do you scale this capability to, like, what does 10x look like, Ben, or even 100x? And, have you really done the work yet to try to figure out, like, what does the scale curve for Beek look like in terms of, you mentioned preserving the culture, which I think is fantastic. But I guess the theory of your business is that you could be much bigger and still maintain this agile approach. How will it work, and how are you going to scale the business?
I think for us, the scaling of the business is really understanding and leaning into that remote and workplace sort of connection. So we've got clients that are based in New South Wales, which is, I guess, 1,600 kilometres away, where we've actually saved that client, hasn't flown over to Adelaide once to view the project or anything else. So the scaling model for us is we can actually have a centralized or a core location where we can actually, doesn't mean we have to set up offices in every state, or we don't have to be based. We can centralize our entire operations in Australia here. We can actually start to do projects overseas, interstate. So our scaling model can be quite extensive based on this technology and this interaction point that we've got, and then that agile ability to sort of be flexible around having centralization rather than pockets everywhere else, where a lot of other sort of in construction, you kind of got to grow, but then you've got to set up again and have an office, have a footprint in every sort of area. We can eliminate all of that as part of our scaling model. So I think that 10x and that 100x, probably we haven't mapped that out in true form yet. I think the last 5 years where we set those milestones, it's just gone, yep, okay, tick, okay, well, let's adapt to this and let's change. So I think the adaptation itself, even in our budgeting and our planning, has had to come into that level of stuff as well, because we've grown so significantly. To be quite rigid, even in that, would have given us some restrictions. That agile approach, just in our simple business operations and our scalings, helped us really change and pivot when needed, pivot in the right way, but also have a look at all the risk factors that come into it. So I wouldn't say that from where we're at today. I guess, as an example, we did projects less than 3 years ago that were sort of $200,000. Now we're sort of $5, $6, $10 million projects. And we haven't really changed the fabric of how we do things any different. It's just been those opportunities that come because we've been able to basically take it on board without actually having to really increase too much internally in personnel resourcing and things like that.
So Ben, how do these improvements show up in the numbers, right? So are you able to complete jobs more quickly? Are you able to deliver more quality, to Rondo's earlier point? Are you able to get more yield out of the work in terms of your end EBITDA compared to the industry? Are you able to get higher productivity against are you measuring that? And we'd just be curious, because it sounds like you have all this data. You're a very data-rich business. So presumably you're really focused on these metrics.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we have been able to. I think when we look at our sort of simple operational costs and overheads, they've been able to be kept fairly low at this stage to get a great amount of output. The quality has been it's a fun one for us internally. The quality has been really good. Our auditing results and our internal results are great. We still have to, we've got a third party, like as a builder, we've got trades that we also have to manage. So that's also a linchpin. Like, we're going on this journey of digital and we're going on this productivity and agile increase all the time, but we also have third-party trades that operate under us, and we actually have to do a lot of education with them, so they work in with our systems. So that's a bit of a challenge in themselves. But the results are definitely showing there in increased quality, increased efficiency and response. I think that's probably our big key, which then allows us to really finish these projects on time, or if not earlier.
Okay, great. So then now so you're on this journey to grow and scale the business. You've got, essentially a really strong kind of operating system. I'd be remiss not to ask you, right? What's the role of AI and, and sort of other emerging technology, optimization, machine learning, et cetera, in your vision, but also more broadly, where are the opportunities in construction?
I think the opportunities in construction are actually quite significant. We're already integrating a lot of AI stuff at the moment. So from that same technology that captures the digital activities and what's going on site and the walkthroughs and that Google Earth vision, it also does an AI mapping. So we can lay over what's happening on site live to a BIM model and actually compare the two and early identify errors. So it will review and track placement of certain, say, mechanical air conditioners or pipe work, and actually look at a BIM model and see if it's in the correct place. So there's quality efficiencies there. The other part of it is that we're starting to evolve into and really start to build a little bit more into our business with the AI is the percentage of work that's been completed by each trade or each discipline against a program or against a QS report. So instead of a QS getting involved for a client or a contract administrator going out to site to see, okay, well, how much work's actually been done? This technology is able to lively track and test from all the thousands of data and everything else it's pulling from, the percentage of work that's been completed by every trade each day. And from that, we can get really good with our sort of cost control areas of the business, as well as programming and efficiencies, because it's just doing it live. So the AI stuff is really becoming a big part. And I think at the very front end in the design area and the engineering discipline, a lot of obviously engineering is based on maths and metrics and rules. So if you've got a simple base design, we've already seen there's some programs now coming out where they can use that base design model, and then it can actually do the engineering disciplines quite easily because it's using the rules, regulations, the standards as its sort of Bible, plus the maths, the requirements and the loading that's part of it, and actually give you quick modeling. So the future of construction with a lot of those engineering disciplines is going to be more, they just check that the model's right rather than actually having to do the calculations and come up with themselves. So that's going to be a massive amount of efficiency, because I know a lot of projects get to the point where they spend a lot of money in design and get to a buildability point, and then they don't stack up, the cost's not there, and it's not a viable project. So if we can reduce a lot of those front-end costs, it translates into the construction costs, because those models can then be translated straight over, because we've got more, like it becomes 100% model rather than a 70%, and we're trying to work out the problems. That just creates massive efficiencies all the way through the business. So yeah, we're looking at a lot of those front-end touch points for us as well, and how we can actually capture them, and looking at a future sort of state of Beek is we possibly bring them into the business as part of our service. So we become that engineering, front-end design, building and completion and handover. So the end part of it with the AI as well, because the capture technology. So a maintenance contractor or a facility management contractor in a building will have the ability to access and scroll through day to day, or wind back as a bit of a slide, what's in a ceiling space, what's happening above, rather than going and looking at drawings as an as-built, what was actually installed. They visually can see what's behind a wall and actually investigate very quickly and solve the problem, and then save a lot of that building management cost or facility management costs at the end of our project as well. So there's a lot of areas within construction in if you deep dive in sort of singular places, there's a lot of improvements coming.
So Ben, are you monetizing that? I'm curious, like, so you've got all this capability. If I'm a facilities manager, am I getting that for free? Or if I'm the building owner, am I, you know what I mean? Is there a Beek subscription for this data? Right?
At this point, it's a let's dangle the carrot, and let them see the greatness of it. Obviously, as a young business, we're still growing. We want customer champions, if you want to call it that. Well, we've got this technology that's great, testimonials, all those things. So at this point in time, it's part of Beek's service. That is the Beek way, and the Beek working with us. That's what you get. So there's a little bit of a funny thing. Do we monetize that and create a whole different monetizing area of the business there? Or do we just obviously maintain that? Well, that's the brand, that's what you get, and that's our big point of difference. So we provide that. So with that, we can say, well, yeah, we might not be the cheapest, but you're going to get a complete package, not just for the build period, but for the end user and then the life of your building.
Yeah. So follow the value proposition story that you tell.
Yeah.
So just staying along those lines, as you look ahead, let's say 3 to 5 years from now, how do you see the construction industry evolving, and what trends are you watching most closely as you think about looking ahead?
I think the big trend for me is labor. Labor costs and labor efficiencies is really a massive one. I know there's some similar industries I'm watching very closely at the moment. We've got a lot of defence contracts here in South Australia, and they're going through EBA agreements, and they're looking at quite large, significant sort of increases over a period of time, which is sort of somewhat normal. But the 4-day work week, I'm really watching how this is going to evolve in our industry, and I think it's slipping into government. There's like I just said, the defence, they're going in the EBA for a 4-day work week. They work a 9-day fortnight at the moment, but they want a 4-day work week. So with those kind of little industries starting, construction's quite a big, strong union here in Australia. I feel that that's going to be an interesting one to watch, and a really challenge in the next sort of 3 to 5 years, how that plays out. Me personally, I think a 4-day work week's great, but I would like to work 7 days a week, and people rotate 4 days. My productivity goes up.
Right.
I get there 4 days and do that model, but we know that Australians love their weekends, and we won't get that.
Right.
What about the impact of like prefabrication in the industry? Do you see that increasing over the next 3 to 5 years as well?
I do. I think it's going to hit the
Modular.
housing. Yeah, the housing industry first. We're mainly commercial builders, so I think housing's in such a demand here in Australia, and with such a growing population, there's a shortfall. So I think that's where the market's going to shift first with the prefabs work. Construction, there's more and more different areas that we've obviously got traditional precast, but now there's new walling technology that's coming out where we got prefabbed brick walls that you can drop in. Seeing that sort of starting to come into the market a lot more. I recently went over to Hong Kong to the Build Expo over there to keep learning and stuff like that, and they're really leaning into the prefabbed area. They've got quite a lot of factories that are being set up over there that are self-automated, that are just putting together a lot of these prefabbed buildings, both in a cast system with concrete and lightweight. So I think it will happen. I think it's purely based on a simple labour cost here in Australia is really high. And at the end of the day, a project needs to be able to return a value to a customer or a government department, whatever it is. So it has to stack up. It has to be feasible. And if that labour cost continues to rise and the material costs isn't far behind, well, then a lot of these projects and developers just won't spend the money because no one wants to spend money to lose money. So that's where these new systems and prefab will come into it a lot more, just to make projects stack up. Because ultimately, construction, I feel, in the next 10, 15 years is reducing the amount of labour on site is the only way that it's going to be able to be sort of sustained as long as it currently is.
Interesting.
Very good, Ben. So we did promise to get you out of here after about 40 minutes, so we're kind of coming up to that point. So just one last question for you. Like, in your journey, 5 years with Beek and looking ahead as you've described it, what are some of the lessons that you would give to other leaders in or out of construction that are sort of Ben's key learnings to apply?
I think the big one is prepare for the unexpected, but don't overthink it. So I think for me is the things that starting a business that you traditionally know, everyone sort of goes, yep, you get all the ducks in a row. But it's often the ones that you just don't see on your peripheral that sort of can get you a bit unstuck. So I think regularly looking and stopping and looking at your own system is a big part of it, and looking into those gaps. Ensuring that your team has the awareness of the owner. So especially in construction, we have a lot of like safety and quality and things like that. And the awareness that you need to train and instill into your team is really important, because as an owner, you'll go out to site and you'll pick 100 things, or as a manager, you might pick 100 things, but the system will fail because there's lack of awareness somewhere. So really focusing in on the awareness of your system, and the team understands that part of it. I think that's probably been the key for us. And then the big part is just enjoy what you're doing. I think you can get bogged down in trying to make all these improvements and trying to do everything else, but if you're not enjoying what you're doing, it can sort of take its toll. So that's probably the simple things. There's nothing groundbreaking there, but I think it's a simple process, and that energy and enjoying what you're doing just helps, and it sort of flows down to everyone else that works for you. So that's
Can't argue with 92%, right? So that's
correct. So
fantastic. I hope you were able to
at
maintain
the end of the
that.
day, the leader or the owner has a strategy and vision, and the team has to execute. So you've just got to give them the tools and the parameters to do so, and then you've got to have the faith in your team to do it.
Great, Ben. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, and for sharing
Thank you, Ben.
with us your journey.
Pleasure.
And we'll look forward to hearing from you as you grow and scale and develop. And we wish you all the best in your future success with Beek and the team. So thanks, Ben. We'll have a good Friday, and hopefully you have a good afternoon with your team.
No worries, guys. Thank you very much for your time.
So, Rondo, that was Ben Rijnbeek from Beek Build. So a really interesting conversation with kind of a young entrepreneur challenging up in a really, really kind of what we would describe as a incumbent rich environment.
Yeah, I loved his fresh perspective on an industry that has been traditionally sort of underperforming and slow. He's just coming in with bringing that sort of technology mindset to and more of a standardization mindset to an industry without much standardization. So I really thought it was great. He was great.
Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting how he's able to take that manufacturing experience from Holden,
Yeah,
right? GM Holden, and then bring that into construction and just basically rethink all those workflows, right? So almost like, and I really enjoyed hearing how the COVID experience created that sort of time to reflect on how do I
right,
order all this? How do I build it? Where he might have been lost in the flow and just he could have created just another construction business, but
right.
was able to do something really different.
And what's interesting is some people would have said that's a really challenging time to start a new business, but for him, he looked at it as an opportunity where people were sort of, trapped in their homes, and he could have access to them to, ask the questions and learn and put things together. So he looked at it as the glass is half full as opposed to half empty, and it was great.
Yeah, and then of course the workforce really interesting, sort of yeah, almost the digital natives and the salty construction people, um, bringing that together somehow and creating this unified culture, which obviously has shown up really well in
Yeah.
his engagement statistics. So I think again that attention to detail and design of projects seems to have also been turned inside in terms of, how do you really think carefully and intentionally about the employee experience, about how clients engage with Beek and so forth. I thought that was really good too.
And how these leverages technology to help them
Certainly.
with that software.
Yeah. So really, really good. And it's always interesting to bring entrepreneurs and hear their story. But I think for the incumbents of the world, the big lesson for me is this stuff is coming and these guys are challenging up. And you got these guys out there with cameras on their hard hats. It's coming for you. So you need to get on the train or you're gonna get bowled over by these younger, more agile, more nimble sort of businesses with fundamentally an operating system philosophy for
Yeah.
construction. I think it's coming.
I read something that said that I think it was a McKinsey report that said something like $270 billion of new and shifting value will be created in the construction industry over the next 10 years or so, 5 to 10 years. And so if you're in the industry and you're in that incumbent space where the value is shifting away, you better really be thinking long and hard about how you can think differently, operate differently so that you can get some of this new value pool that's being created in the space.
Hmm. And then also, I think, I think the opportunity ahead for Ben is to really be thinking hard about, you created this IP, right? How do I scale that IP, not just how do I scale the construction business? So, that was one
Mm-hmm.
area I'm not sure he's been working on yet, but, I see lots of opportunity to think differently about how do you take this capability and sort of bring that to the industry on a wider, perhaps even global scale from Adelaide. So,
Yeah.
and I don't know, Rhonda, if you have much familiarity with businesses in Adelaide, but they tend to be pretty scrappy, right? So it's a lonely little corner there in the bottom of a lonely little country at the bottom of the world where these guys are pretty innovative almost because they have to be. And,
Yeah. Well, I got
I
scrappy from him. That came across. He was scrappy
yeah,
guy. Yeah.
completely. Yeah. So, all right, Rondo, great to have another one in the can, and certainly look forward to seeing you. Have a great weekend.
Absolutely. And for those of you, our audience listening, subscribe to the Insurgent Mindset on YouTube, follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and also check out our companion blogs on insurgentsgroup.com.
All right, Rondo, have a good one. Thanks.
All right. Take care.